In today's video, I'm excited to do a basic home network build using a mixed vendor stack. Hi and welcome to the channel. My name is Tony, and if this is your first time here, be sure to subscribe and make sure you hit that little bell so that you're alerted to when I release new content. So all of the equipment I'll be using in today's video I did pay for out of my own funds, with the exception of the GWN 7615 access point, which Grandstream did send me, and I did a video review, a first look at the GWN 7615. I'll put a link to that video up above as well as down in the video description below. That being said, all of the comments you hear are my own. No one is paying or sponsoring me for this video. So as you can see by this diagram, we're going to be building out this network using a mixed variety of equipment from various vendors. We're going to be using the Protectly as a firewall router, the Edge Switch 24 Lite as the switch, and the Grandstream GWN 7615. Now, the Protectly is the 4-port vault model, and it's the Willie Howe Special, meaning it came loaded with a default configuration of OpenSense and a default network of 10.255.10.0/24. So what we're going to do is build upon that basic configuration by adding a couple of VLANs. We're going to add a VLAN for the house devices like the laptops, cell phones, mobile devices, etc. That'll be VLAN 10, and it'll be on a subnet of 192.168.10.0/24. And then we'll just build out a guest network on VLAN 20, and it'll be on the subnet 192.168.20.0/24. And you can go on and build out other networks as well, like IoT networks, but for the purpose of this video, we're just going to stick with the 2 additional networks. That being said, looking at the Edge router, I did factory default the Edge router, but the only thing I did after setting it back to factory default was to log in and change the default password. And as far as the GWN 7615 is concerned, I did a recent video on this device. I did a first look and basic setup, so I'll put a link to that video up above, and as well as in the video description if you missed it. We'll just pick up with the setup and configuration of the GWN 7615 from that point. So I just want to say before we get started, the purpose behind this video is not to focus on the Protectly device or OpenSense for that matter. In fact, I've only been playing with OpenSense for about a week now. I will say I am really liking it, but the real intent behind doing this video is just to show that you can do a network build out using equipment from various manufacturers and get them to all play nicely together in the sandbox. So that being said, let's get started with the configuration of the Protectly. Okay, so we're signed into the Protectly, we're looking at the dashboard, and this is the default configuration that was loaded on the device. Currently, we have 2 interfaces, a LAN and a WAN port. You may notice that the WAN is on a private network, and that's because I have the Protectly plugged into an existing network. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add the additional 2 networks, VLANs to be exact, a VLAN for the house and a VLAN for the guest. So we'll come on over to the left menu and we'll click on Interfaces. And we'll come down and select Other Types, and then down again to select VLAN. On this page, we're going to come to the upper right-hand corner and we're going to click on the orange Add button, and we'll begin the configuration of our first VLAN. So the first thing we need to do is select the parent interface. So by default, it selects the WAN interface, so we are going to select the LAN interface, which on this device is IGB1. The VLAN tag for the house network is going to be VLAN 10. We're going to leave the VLAN priority set to best effort. And for the description, we're going to call this house. And next, we're going to go ahead and click on Save. And once this saves, we'll go ahead and we'll perform the same set of steps to add the second VLAN for the guest network. Okay, so now that we have the VLAN 10 added, let's go ahead and click on the orange Add button one more time. And this time, again, we're going to select the parent interface, and we want it to be on the LAN, IGB1. We're going to go ahead and put the VLAN tag of 20. Again, the priority will be left at best effort, and we're going to call this guest, and then click on Save. Okay, so there you have, we have on interface 1, the LAN, we have VLAN 10 and 20, the house and the guest. So next we have to assign the VLAN. So we'll come over to assignments, and you can see we have the LAN and the WAN, and now we have a new interface, VLAN 10 on IGB1, the house. So we're going to call this HouseNet, and we'll go ahead and say add. And we have another new interface, VLAN 20 on IGB1, and that's guest. So the description will be guestnet. We'll come over and hit the plus sign to add VLAN 20. Let's click on save. Now that we've assigned them, let's come over and finish the configuration. So here we are. We're under the interfaces tab still. Let's click on the HouseNet. We just have to finish configuring each of the new interfaces. So let's click on enable interface. The description is HouseNet. That's fine. We're going to come down to where it says IPv4 configuration type. We're going to select static IPv4 from the drop-down menu. And then down in this area here under static IPv4 configuration, we're going to give it a static IP of 192.168.10.1/, and we're going to make it a 24 network. And we'll go ahead and we'll click on save. And we get the message that the HouseNet configuration has been changed. You must apply the changes in order for them to take effect. So we'll go ahead and we'll say apply changes, and then we'll repeat the steps for the guest network. Okay, so we'll come back over to the interfaces area and we'll click on guest network, and we'll just perform the same steps. We'll click on enable interface. You can come down over to the IPv4 configuration, and we're going to say static IPv4. Now you can also configure the IPv version 6. I didn't do that on the last VLAN, and I'm not going to do it on this VLAN, but there is an option to do that. We're going to come down at the bottom and we're going to click in the IPv4 address in the configuration area, and this one will be 192.168.20.1, and again this will be a /24 network, and we'll go ahead and we'll click on save. Again, it says the guest net configuration has been changed. You must apply the changes. So we'll go ahead and we'll say apply. So if you're getting value from this video, please hit that like button. It lets YouTube know you like what I'm doing here on the channel. It would be much appreciated. Now, let's get back to the video. Okay, so now that we have the VLANs added, assigned, and configured, it's time to add the DHCP servers for those interfaces. So we'll come on over to the Services tab in the left menu. Then we'll select DHCP v4, and here you could see the two networks we recently added. So we'll start with the HouseNet. The first step is to enable the DHCP server on the HouseNet interface, so we'll put a check here. You can see your subnet information and your subnet mask information. We'll do a starting range and an ending range, so we'll do a starting range here for the pool of 192.168.10.25, and we'll end it on 192.168.10.254. I like to add DNS servers, so we'll use some public servers, 1.1.1.1, and then as a secondary we'll use 8.8.8.8. Now typically when creating DHCP servers, I do like to put in the gateway, but it does say here by default it's going to use the IP on this interface of the firewall as the gateway. So we can go ahead and leave that blank and just come all the way down and click on save. Now we just have to do the same thing for the guest network. So we'll come over and click on guest network or guest net. We'll go ahead and we'll enable the DHCP server. Again, you have your subnet information and your subnet mask. So we'll go ahead and we'll start this one. I'll actually start this one. We'll change that to 20. And I'll actually start this one on .2 because it's a guest network. So we'll give them the whole range. And we'll go all the way to 254. Again, I like to use the DNS public servers. So we'll drop them in here. And we'll come all the way down and we'll go ahead and we'll say save. Okay, so now we have our DHCP servers set up. The final step is to just set up the basic firewalls that will allow traffic to pass on these interfaces. So let's do that. Let's come up to the Firewall tab in the left menu. Let's click on Rules. And now you can see we have our guest network here and our house network here. So as you see, it says no house net rules are currently defined. So let's go ahead and click on the orange add button. And the action is going to be pass. The interface will remain house_net. The direction will be in. IPv4 as the TCP/IP version, protocol any. And under source here, we're just going to say housenet and come all the way down, and we're going to say save. And what we're doing is just allowing all traffic to flow on this interface. We're going to add one more for the guest network. Actually, let's click apply before we do that. When changes have been applied successfully, and now you can see we have the pass rule here. We're going to do exactly the same thing on the guest network. We'll click on guest network. We'll come up to the add button. The action is to pass. The interface is guestnet. The direction is in. Again, IPv4, protocol any, and under source, we're just going to select the guestnet and come all the way down, and we're going to say save. Everything else could be left at defaults. And you can see now we have the pass rule, IPv4, the source is guestnet, and we are just going to go ahead and apply the changes, and we'll be good to go. So now that we have the Protectly configured the way we need it to be, it's time to configure the Edge Switch 24 Lite and let this switch know that there will be VLANs on this network. So the first thing you'll notice here probably is that I have 3 ports lit up. The first port is connected to the Protectly. The second port is connected to the GWN 7615, by the way, which is being powered by a PoE injector. And then port 9 is my computer. So let's let this switch know that there are VLANs so that it could play nicely with the Protectly. We'll come over to the left menu here, and we're going to click on the second icon, which is the VLAN tab. And by default, you can see the switch has one VLAN, and that's the native VLAN 1. So we need to let this switch know about VLAN 10 and VLAN 20. So we'll click where it says new VLAN ID. We'll type in 10 and hit the plus sign. And then we're going to type in 20 and hit the plus sign. And now we've added VLAN 10 and VLAN 20 to the switch. Now don't forget to apply the changes. You can see it says VLAN settings have been applied. Now, remember the Protectly is connected to port 1. The Protectly is sending all of the VLAN traffic to the switch. So what we need to do on port 1 is make that a trunk port on the switch. Notice it's selected port 1 on the default VLAN and port 1 on VLAN 10 and on VLAN 20. However, what it should have done as well, in addition to selecting it, is changing the E excluded to a T for tagged. And it didn't do that, and I'm not sure why. It should have. So what we're going to do is we're going to click twice to change that to a tagged port and the tagged port on VLAN 20. So what this is saying here is all of the untagged traffic will be the 10.255 network. And then on VLAN 10, the tagged traffic, it'll be sending information for 192.168.10 network. And then same thing for VLAN 20 on port 1. It'll be carrying the information for the guest network, which is 192.168.20. So that being said, we'll go ahead now and we'll apply the changes. Like I said, I don't know why it didn't automatically change those 2 ports from excluded to tagged, but we did it anyway. So we'll click on apply. And again, it says VLAN settings have been applied. Now, the next thing we need to do is adjust port 2 on the switch as well, because that's where this particular access point is plugged in. So we're going to leave port 2 set to untagged, and actually we're going to be doing the exact same thing. We're going to be tagging port 2 as a tagged port on VLAN 10 because we do want the VLAN 10 traffic to pass through to the access point as well as the VLAN 20 traffic. So we're going to take port 2 on VLAN 20, and we're going to tag that as well. Let's go ahead and click apply. And again, the VLAN settings have been updated. Now, the way this is right now, if you plug, let's say, a computer into port 13, the IP address that it's going to get is in the 10.255 subnet. And that's because that's the untagged traffic. Suppose you wanted that same computer to get a 192.168.10 address, which would be VLAN 10. You'd have to change the port to untagged, and then you'd have to go back up to VLAN 1 and change that to excluded. That's just the way it works on the edge switch. However, now if you plug that computer into port 15, it would get an address assigned in the 192.168.10 network. Anyway, we're not going to get into that. I'm just going to change this back to untagged and change this back to excluded. For right now, we're just going to leave everything as is. So we have our trunk port on port 1. We have port 2 set to pass untagged traffic as well as tagged traffic for VLAN 10 and VLAN 20. And then everything else on the switch will be untagged. So all the other switches will get an address in that native 10.255 network. Again, I don't want to go into too much detail on this. You could spend several videos on explaining what is a VLAN and how it works. And it works differently across all manufacturers. So let's go ahead and say apply. And that completes the configuration on the switch for the purpose of this video. So if you're getting value from this video, please hit that like button. It lets YouTube know you like what I'm doing here on the channel. It would be much appreciated. Now, let's get back to the video. So we're in the GWN 7615 user interface. But before we begin the build out on the access point, let's take a moment to review what we've accomplished so far in this video. We set up the Protectly where we added VLANs for HouseNet and for GuestNet. We assigned them and we configured them. We created DHCP servers for those interfaces and VLANs, and we also created the basic firewall rules that would allow traffic to pass on those interfaces. Then we moved over to the edge switch, and really all we did was make the edge switch aware of VLAN 10 and VLAN 20 so it would pass that traffic. Now we're in the GWN 7615. The only SSID we have configured thus far is the one that we created in that first look video. So for today's build out, we need to add 2 more SSIDs, 2 more wireless networks, and that is the HouseNet network and the GuestNet network. So we're going to do that by clicking on the blue add sign. First thing I want to do is give the SSID a name, so we'll call it HouseNet. Make sure you click enable SSID. You can see we're being prompted to give it a pre-shared key, so we'll use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that's okay for this video demonstration, but in the real world, make sure you use a stronger password. We're not going to do anything with client isolation, at least not on HouseNet. And everything else looks okay, but before we say save, I just want to click here on device membership. I want to select the GWN 7615. And this is basically just letting the access point know we're adding the SSID to this particular access point. So I'm going to go ahead and move it over to the member devices and click on save. And it says you have 28 changes yet not applied. So we'll go ahead and we'll click apply. And now it's just updating the services. Okay, so we're going to do the exact same thing now for the guest network, but we're going to configure it a little differently. So let's go ahead and click on the blue plus button. And we're going to call this wireless network GuestNet. We're going to enable the SSID. We're going to enable the VLAN. Oh, I don't think I enabled the VLAN on the HouseNet, so we're going to have to go back and check. I believe I skipped that step. Good thing I caught that. So we're going to make this VLAN 20, which is the guest VLAN. We're going to give it a password. And again, for this video, we're just going to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're not going to enable the captive portal, but I am going to enable client isolation. And under client isolation mode, you have 3 modes. You have radio, internet, and gateway MAC. So let's take a look at the help and see what it says. It says use to set the client isolation mode. Radio is defined as isolated among each other within the same SSID. Internet, all wireless stations are isolated among each other, and all private network addresses are also isolated. If you select Gateway MAC, all wireless stations are isolated among each other, and all private network addresses other than the gateway are also isolated. So for this video, I'm just going to leave it set to radio. That's fine for now. I'm going to come up to device membership to make sure I add this SSID to the 7615. So we'll move it over to member devices, and we're going to say save. And again, we have changes that we have to apply. Okay, so we've added the guest network and the house network. However, I can see right here that I forgot to put the VLAN tag on the house SSID. So let's go do that now. I could imagine how many of you caught that and blew up my comments, but I did catch it. So here we go. We're going to click on VLAN on the house net. I'm going to enter VLAN 10. We'll go ahead and we'll click on save. Again, we have to apply the changes. Okay, everything's been successfully applied. So we have VLAN 20 now on the guest net, and VLAN 10 on the house net. So at this point, we've configured the Protectly, we've configured the edge switch, and now we've configured the GWN 7615. We've tagged the 2 SSIDs. So if everything is working correctly, if I attach to either of the SSIDs, I should get IP addresses issued in one of those 2 ranges. Okay, so now it's time to see if all of the devices, the mixed manufacturers, are playing nicely together in the sandbox. You might see a network error pop up on the screen, and that's because if you look at my network settings, nothing is connected. I have Wi-Fi turned off. You can see it says Ethernet not connected, and that's because I physically pulled the Ethernet cable from the edge switch, so my computer's no longer hardwired into the network. So what we're going to do now is we're going to turn Wi-Fi on, and we're going to select a network and see what IP address we get. So there's the network error I was talking about. So let's go ahead and let's turn on Wi-Fi. And it connected right away to HouseNet. You can see we have a status of connected, and we did receive an address in the 192.168.10.25 range. That is VLAN 10, and that's exactly what we wanted. Let's bring up a ping tool, and let me just ping out to Google and see if we get a response from the Google servers. And you can see we're getting a reply from Google. So that's outstanding. That's exactly what we wanted. Okay, let's choose a different network. Let's choose GuestNet. And it's going to ask us for the password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And again, remember, use a stronger password in real life. Let's click on join. And hopefully once it connects, we should get an address in the 20 network. Okay, we have a connected status. And here you can see we have an address in 192.168.20.2, and it picked up the first available address. Again, let's bring up the ping. And let's just ping out to Google again, this time from the guest network. And again, you can see we're getting a successful response from the Google server. Okay. One more thing. We talked about when we were configuring the switch, how native VLAN 1 is the native VLAN on 10.255.10.0, right? So I've shown you now that We're successfully connected. The VLAN tagging is working. We got an address on VLAN 10 and VLAN 20. The other network that was originally in the GWN 7615 was the lab GWN 7615 Wi-Fi. So we should get an address in the 10.255 network once it connects. Okay, so we have a status of connected, and you can see here, this is the native VLAN or the native LAN at 10.255.10.16. And again, if I bring up the ping tool and ping out to Google, you can see we're getting a successful response. So I'm pretty stoked about the fact that I was able to build out this mixed network environment successfully using devices from varied manufacturers and getting them to all play nicely in the sandbox. Now, I would love to hear what your network consists of. Let me know and put that down in the comments below, because you could pretty much do what I did with any combination of vendors. That being said, I hope you liked this video, and I hope you stayed long enough to see it in its completion. Well, actually, not really its completion. I know some of you are probably saying that, hey, you left out this firewall and that firewall. I hope to do another video, like a follow-up video, where I'll be segregating that guest network, throttling down the bandwidth, and things like that. So stay tuned, watch the channel, give it a like, subscribe, all of the above. If you want to support the channel, if you like the content, I do have a Patreon now. The link is down in the video description, as well as I have a PayPal link down there as well. I do appreciate all of you. Once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.